getting a collection of women together that are out there to be able to help other women who've gone through similar things, especially in the domestic violence, the abandonment, and of course, the invasion trauma. And so I'm wanting that to go out and actually help other women. So I am so honored that you responded to the message, and here you are today. So basically, I'm going to go through a series of questions which you can answer how you want. If we get bogged down into detail, we get bogged down in the detail. It's going to go wherever it's going to go. But first of all, I also wanted to know, did you have your book handy?
Uh, so my book isn't out yet,
Oh,
but I have other books that I've been a part of.
okay.
But my big book, I'm actually next week it's being turned over to the publishers for the first round of editing.
Okay, so we can look forward to something coming out, especially, putting this out there as
Yes.
well. That is going to be not only, have a meet and greet of you here, but also to be able to, go the next chapter and have something in their hands. Is it going to be an audio as well?
It will be. Yes.
Are you doing the audio?
I don't know. Yeah, probably.
I love it when authors actually do their own audio because I just, it's that bit more authentic as well. So tell me,
I do too.
whereabouts are you coming from? Where are you in the world?
So yeah, I'm in Oregon over in the USA, so Pacific Northwest.
Yes.
And actually I live in Eugene, Oregon. It's home of Nike. So everyone knows Nike. Nike started here where this is we always have all the track and field events here. Olympic trials are always here for track and field, and we're just a big outdoorsy athletic
Community.
town
Wow.
community. Yep.
Do you know what? I just learned something. I know about Nike, but I did not know it came from there. So that's amazing. Thank you for your share. Well, I'm in very sunny Victoria at the moment. You're in I'm in approaching summer. You're in winter.
Yes, and it's been very, very cold.
Oh,
Ugh.
was it as cold as last winter?
I feel like it's colder this winter, and I know this because we're a big snowboarding and skiing family, and we live about an hour from one of the ski resorts. And last year we didn't open until January, and we're already open right now.
Wow.
So lots of snow, much colder, much wetter.
Yeah. Yeah. So a bit of adjustment going on with the season. So more fun and play. I like it. In the snow. Well, of course, I'm in Australia, in Victoria, down the bottom, and it's very hot today, not normally. So I'm trying to sit in as cool place as I can. But again, I wanted to thank you for coming on. So, these questions that I'm doing, they're designed to inspire other women, by exploring your journey, insights that you can offer, and the empowerment that can come from that, and any strategies that might be there that could be snippets from the book, whatever it is, or other things that you've done. So I've got 20 questions lined up. Whether we get through them or not is another thing. It could be just 10, but I'm excited to go on the journey because these things, you never know where they go, right?
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Let's do it.
Okay, so can you share a bit about your background and what led you to become, the in the law field, to be attorney, and being a transformational teacher?
Yeah, so I found myself on the floor of my sister's bathroom, just tears streaming down my cheeks, like, why me? What what did I do wrong? Where did my life go so terribly wrong? This wasn't the life I signed up for. This wasn't what I wanted. And
Yeah.
so I'm sitting there just, crying out to, God, the universe, or just getting it out there. Like what happened? And so fast forward a couple months. Oh, and I had lost my eyesight. I was blind. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I couldn't see. And it was in that moment I felt the divine saying to me, like God saying to me, Stephanie, you're not seeing your life clearly.
Wow.
You, it's time to wake up and really see your life because we were meant to be the stars of our story.
Yes.
But I spent over 20 years within two psychologically and emotionally abusive marriages, and I was not the star of my story.
No.
I was a B actor, a supporting player in my story.
Yeah.
It's my story. Why aren't I the star?
Yep.
And so it was in that moment where I had to sit and process everything that had happened
Wow.
over the last 20 years. And what had happened was leading up to this event where I was crying on my sister's floor. I used to live in Florida, way down in beautiful tropical Southwest Florida,
Yeah.
on the water. Well, we were hit by Hurricane Ian in 2022. It was the largest hurricane to ever hit,
Wow.
recorded to hit Florida. And we were the eye of the hurricane. We were right there. The ocean filled up my entire house. We lost everything,
Yeah.
everything. And then my ex-husband went on this huge narcissistic rage, and everything was destroyed. And so, sitting there in that moment at my sister's house, I realized that my mind was also hit by a category 5 hurricane. And just as I had to clean up the hurricane, the physical hurricane, I had to clean up the emotional hurricane that had destroyed my inner world. And
Wow.
so using this as a metaphor,
Yeah.
you after the hurricane, our house was full of the brackish, muddy, toxic, disgusting water sitting in the Florida heat. And so when the water finally went away, receded, it still was a couple weeks before we had power.
Yeah.
So you have to act really quickly. You have to get everything out of there. You have to clean it up.
Yeah.
You have to take the walls down to the studs because you can't let the mold get in there. And so similarly with my mind and my inner world, I had to take it down to the studs. And then I had to relook at the foundation and say, does this need to be bulldozed? My house had to be bulldozed. My mind needed to be bulldozed. And I had to sort through and see what could be salvaged, just like I did going through our house. Can we keep this? Can I wash it? It it's just stuff, but
Yeah.
our stuff holds memories, and our stuff, we have emotional connections to our things. And it's similar with our beliefs that form the foundation of who we are.
Yep.
I had to sort through the rubbish, the giant pile of all my assumptions and my beliefs, and I had to hold each one up and say, is this me? Do I agree with this? Is this who I am? And the stuff that was not me, I had to toss, just like I had to throw everything away at my house.
Yeah.
And then I had to start with a brand new foundation and rebuild the foundation of who I am and who I'm meant to be and who I want to be. And
Wow.
that is how I am here.
And that started from 2022.
Yes.
Wow. And we've, it's what a huge growth in a very short amount of time. That you've captured that well. You've hit my heart on that one. Wow, I want to share. That's a beautiful, understanding of where we're coming from here. So these questions, hopefully will link into all those sorts of things as well. But it's, what experiences in life have also shaped your passion for supporting, some survivors, since you've been on there, of these narcissistic abuse and domestic violence that you may have been in contact with?
Yes. So when I was much younger,
Yeah.
before I was married, I lived a completely different life.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very stable, loving family. My parents actually, were aware of generational patterns that they no longer wanted in their life. So they broke a lot of those patterns. And so I grew up in a very loving, um, safe, stable home,
Okay.
which is a myth because so many people think, well, you were in domestic violence. You must have a background in physical violence. No,
Yeah.
I didn't, because that's not, we'll come back to that later, but it's not always about that.
No.
And so I manifested my way around the world. I wanted to change the world. At first, I thought I'd be a doctor. Everyone's doctor, doctors without borders. I have a science background.
Yeah.
Then I thought, no, I can use my voice and I can speak, and I love law, and I can create change through law. So my background is actually global politics and
Oh,
economics. And I studied Middle Eastern women. That was my area.
yeah.
And I was involved in one of the largest women's conferences in the world inside Dubai. I was the lead facilitator for almost 10 years, working in Dubai, partnering with Dubai Women's College. And when I was in undergrad, I started working at the prosecutor's office. And this is how I got on the domestic violence team. So I was a sexual assault advocate and a domestic violence advocate.
Wow.
And I was nominated. So I was at the prosecutor's office for several years, and I was nominated based on my work and my advocacy and what I did for the governor's award. So I actually won the governor's award, which is a big deal. It's given to one person in the entire state every year.
Wow.
So this was my background. I worked in domestic violence. But when you think of domestic violence 20, 30 years ago, we were focused on physical violence.
Yeah.
We weren't focused on emotional and psychological abuse. So
Yep.
then I find myself in these two marriages. It doesn't fit the traditional mold of domestic violence, but it's not right. Like it's you're walking on eggshells. Nothing feels right. Like, why am I all this gaslighting? And again, back then, we didn't talk about gaslighting. We didn't talk about coercive control and manipulation. It was, is he beating you?
Yeah.
No. Okay, well, go to therapy or do this. Like, we weren't talking about narcissistic abuse the way we are now.
Okay.
And so when I got into these two marriages, my first husband, I was married to him for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, kind of jumped into this other marriage with a malignant slash sociopath. It was very different. And so when I got out of these marriages and realized what had happened to me with my background in law and my background in domestic violence, I knew that I could come and speak from an authority, from a legal authority, and also from a personal experience authority.
Yeah.
And
Wow. And amazing that, it is. And not everyone has to have that background as well, because a lot of people will jump to that conclusion as well. And the fact that, you have had that firsthand, even in a different country, working with those Middle Eastern women. Wonderful that you've done that. I've had a lot to do with Middle Eastern culture myself, but not necessarily the woman, just the culture and what we do. But that experience itself again, but to win such an award, wow, that's more of that authority and leadership, and that's going as well. And, as you've mentioned, your own journey of healing after these two marriages with, narcissistic partners. And you're right, we'd never talked about that part of it. I know some of the marriage that I've been in is very similar to that as well. And what are some of the key lessons, you learned during that time after the in the healing process?
Yeah, some of the big ones, what I actually did was, we're trying to figure out what happened to us. And you're still in this fog, which is cognitive dissonance, right? It's where you have the intellectual knowledge and the intellectual understanding,
Mhm.
but then you have a belief over here that doesn't match. And so you have this gap, and you really have to learn how to integrate that gap. But in that gap is the fog of cognitive dissonance. And so you're still just like, what? What just happened? And so, and how did I get here? I'm like, I'm successful. I'm smart. I'm all these things. And it happened to me. My background, I'm an attorney, and my background is in domestic violence. It doesn't matter. It can happen to you. It can happen to me.
Mm.
And so I actually I got a journal out, and I flipped the script. What if my two ex-husbands were these wise teachers instead of monsters trying to destroy my life?
Yeah.
Let's just throw that to the side. Let's say, what if they were wise teachers sent here to teach me powerful lessons? What would those lessons be? And then I started with my first husband. Okay, what did I learn from you? What did you teach me? And so, of course, in this space, we all talk about boundaries. Oh, you need boundaries and this and that. Well, yes, we need boundaries, and boundaries are for you. And I realized that over time, my boundaries were more like a toddler fence, or those dog gates. They're flexible and movable. You can put them in different shapes. And so
Yeah.
I would put my little fence out there and call it a boundary, and they would push up against it and it would fall over. And I would say, oh, okay, so it needs to be over here now. So let's pick it up and move it. And so I was constantly doing that. Um, and so that's not a boundary, right? A boundary is firm. It's not a toddler fence. And so, looking at being able to flip the perspective and the perception of it, I went and just made a huge list of all kinds of things they could have taught me, or they did teach me. And when we're able to do that, we can actually start having compassion. We can start to release them and to forgive and to let them go, and bridge that gap of cognitive dissonance. And so, yeah, I don't know if that completely answers the question, but
I think it answers it quite well, actually, and because that is all a healing process, because you are trying to reduce that gap down and that cognitive distance that you talked about, and doing that exercise and being able to flip it and turn it into and forgiveness and all those sorts of things in there really does, close that gap completely, I think, and it is that let go process that happens. So that's definitely fantastic and a great thing for other women to listen to as well. But how did you begin to recognize, the patterns of narcissistic behavior in your relationships? And, what steps did you take to actually break free from those cycles for women listening?
yeah. So the cycle of narcissistic abuse is the idolization phase, the devaluation and the discard, the love bombing. It's all these big words that are thrown around a lot. And so, similarly to everyone else's story, in the beginning, it's the idealization phase, it's the fairy tale. It's fun. Narcissists are fun in the beginning. They're charming. My two ex-husbands were beautiful, charming people with beautiful smiles that could light up the room. And when they focus their attention on you, it makes you feel good. It makes you feel validated. It makes you feel seen. And in that phase, they're very good at seeing you and hearing you. They're some of the best listeners. And so you feel this very intense connection. Someone gets you, someone sees you, someone wants to hear your stories. And so you start sharing your stories and you start going deep and they're listening to you. But we don't know that they're actually taking notes as ammo for later.
Mm.
And so in that idolization period as well, because it is the fairy tale, you start dreaming. Oh, we could have this sort of life together. And you know, you'll hear words like, oh, we're soulmates or this and that. And for me, I'll go with my second husband because he was the most recent, but he he wanted to do his bucket list was my bucket list.
Yeah.
Let's sell everything and go sail around the world. Nobody wants to do that. He wanted to do that. So, you know, and I manifested him. I made the list.
Yeah.
Tall, dark, handsome, divorced dad with only boys the same age as my boys.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very specific.
And you got it.
A week later, I meet someone who checks off every box. And so when he starts throwing around those words like, we're soulmates, where were you 20 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Well, it resonated because I'm like, I manifested you. You are my gift from the universe. And so, you know, and so it was wonderful. And then we got married really quickly because that's what they do. They need to get you hooked.
Yeah.
These relationships rush. They're intense. They go quickly because they have to get you hooked because the narcissists all play the same game and they can only pretend for so long. And so they have to figure out a way to get you to not leave. So they're listening, they're hearing your stories, they're validating your feelings and your experiences, they're throwing the soulmate around, they're charming to your whole family. My whole family loved him. And and then it just moved very quickly. Then he was living with me. And then we got married. So all this happened within 1 year, which is fast.
Yeah.
But when you think it's your soulmate and it's, you know, you manifested this person and they're so wonderful and you've just come out of a horrible 14-year marriage.
Why wait?
Exactly. We're older. Let's go. And so we got married in December 2019. And then remember what happened in 2020?
Yeah.
The world shut down
Yeah.
and his mask came off. And so it was very confusing because his behavior changed overnight. Here he went from this wonderful, loving, kind, attentive, genuine person to angry, frustrated, miserable, mean. The gaslighting started. And I'm going to define gaslighting because it's a word that is misused.
Around.
Gaslighting is when someone in a trusted relationship, so there has to, I can't gaslight the person in the car in front of me. They didn't just gaslight me. I don't know them.
No.
And so it's usually in an intimate relationship, but it can be parent to child. It could also be me as an attorney. If you were my client, we're in a trusted relationship, I could gaslight you. And so, you know, there's relationships you have to look at for it to be considered gaslighting. And then what gaslighting does, they try to change your perception, your reality, your understanding of what happened because it shifts the blame from them and they no longer have to take responsibility for their behaviors or actions and they can shift it all back to you.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're so sensitive. You're always so sensitive. You can't take a joke. Why do you always take everything so personally? No one would ever believe you if you tried to leave and if you told them.
Very true.
And so it's conditioning and programming. And what it does over an extended period of time you start widening this gap between what you know intellectually. No, he's mean.
Mm.
He's bullying me. I'm not like that, to what you feel emotionally in your heart. But I love him. We have a baby together. If I just persist, if I just change these things about me, I will find the guy that I fell in love with. And the gap keeps widening and the fog keeps growing.
Mm.
And they want to keep you there because when you're in the fog and there's such a big gap, that's where they can control you. That's where we give our power away. That's where they condition or we condition ourselves.
Yeah.
And we start living from this place of reaction. So this is the devaluation phase. But they can't be mean all the time
Oh,
because no one would ever stay with them, right? If
correct.
someone was always mean, we would just leave. The gap would close so fast. So what they do is it's intermittent reinforcement. They're mean today. Tomorrow, they're wonderful again. 3 days later, they're horrible and giving you the silent treatment, and you don't know what the heck just happened. And then they're kind again. And so when you have all this intermittent reinforcement of it's good, it's bad, it's positive, it's negative, it's Dr. Jekyll, it's Mr. Hyde, it forms a trauma bond.
Yeah.
And trauma is our attachment to what has happened to us, and then we internalize it. So, for instance, he could say, well, that was just a joke. You're so sensitive. You're taking everything personally.
Mhm.
But what he did to me, I'm attaching a big emotional reaction to it. I
Mhm.
am creating a trauma. And now I'm going inside with that trauma that I've just created. I'm ruminating on it. I'm getting angry. I can't stop thinking about it. And so it's we create the trauma. Now they create the environment,
Yeah.
but we create the trauma. And so when you have that over time, it's very, very destructive. And the whole time you're in that living in that fog, you're trying to figure out what's going on. And so then there's only two ways out of these relationships. You leave
Mhm.
or you get discarded. And so in 2020, when his mask came off and all the devaluation and all the gaslighting and all the manipulation, it was so confusing. And then there was a night where he was just being horrible and miserable. And I recorded him and he grabbed the phone and attacked me. And my phone actually called 911. Which over here in the US is, for the, law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so um, I had already left. I went to my sister's house. My brother-in-law actually is the OSP sergeant, so he is the head of of all the cops in the area. So I went over to his house and stuff, and I ended up getting a restraining order on my ex-husband and filing for divorce. We were separated. I went no contact. I was trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
And then the love bombing came.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know about all of this.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I didn't have a name for everything I'd went through.
Cool.
But the love bombing came. And so we were separated for 2 months, and then he weaseled his way back into my life. I will change. I will go to therapy. I will do all this stuff. And he did. He did everything I asked. But remember, this is like 2020, 2021. Everything is still online. How can you go to rehab online? I mean, come on. I don't even know I don't know what he was doing because there was no change in behavior. And it was another several years of going through the same cycle. But now I got pregnant and now we have a baby together. And now I'm more deeply invested in this relationship. But the gaslighting came on stronger. And so, it's when you find the courage and the strength to leave, you will leave. But it's when you close that gap of what you know about this person and what you truly feel in your heart for this person. Because the thing is that they're not going to change. They won't change. And we can pray all day long. We can ask God, we can ask the universe, we can beg and plead and say, why can't you just love me and respect me? But the only person that we can change and the only work we can do is within ourselves. Because over time, we are the ones who are changing. Well, maybe if I love him more, maybe if I dress like this, maybe if I lose weight, maybe if I do this. And so we're constantly shifting and trying to change because we want the person we fell in love with. We want that person back, but that person was never there in the first place. It was all an illusion. And so when I talk to women about, and I say women because that's my audience, but this happens to men a lot. And there are very horrible, horrible narcissistic women. And there are many men who are victims. So it doesn't matter your gender.
Yep.
It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. It does not matter. But I'll tell you what does matter. It is your subconscious beliefs and your subconscious programming. And so that is what you have to look at. So if you're looking at your life, you're like, God, I keep attracting these horrible narcissistic men in my life. Why?
Mm. And you've got to go back to
And so
the drawing board.
you have to go back and you have to, I stopped saying you got to do the inner work because it's work.
Yeah. And
It's work. It's work. And the word work can have like such negative connotations. Well, I don't want to do the work. I'm not going to do that, blah, blah, blah. So, what if you paused and you remembered and rediscovered who
yeah,
you were? Doesn't that sound better? I think it sounds better.
sounds much better.
It sounds more feminine.
And fun.
Sounds more feminine to me. Yeah.
And
Doing the inner work sounds so masculine.
it's more relaxing. It's also a little bit more I know organic
Yeah.
because I agree with the work thing. We go out and we do exercise work and we do and no one wants to do those things either always because it's work. So I totally agree on that one. But that is amazing. Analogy and stories and really feeling of what you've actually answered there. And I think a lot of women and men, even if they do watch this, can relate because I do know both men and women who've gone through these scenarios as well. So what you're saying and what I'm hearing is really, really helpful. And as an attorney in where you are in your country as well, how do you think the legal system can better, serve the survivors of the domestic violence or the narcissistic abuse?
Yeah, it's hard because it's such a word that is thrown around
Yes.
so flippantly. It's like two probably non-narcissistic and non-super toxic people are getting a divorce. And the divorces are emotionally charged. But then you have, oh, domestic violence. Oh, he's a narcissist. He's a narcissist. And neither of them truly are. And so there's a lot of confusion in the legal system,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Um, even when officers respond to domestics. So about 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, a lot of the states, and I don't know how it is in Australia, but a lot of the states, we started doing mandatory arrests for the primary aggressor.
Yeah.
So now the cops go on scene and they have a brief moment to determine who the primary aggressor is. Um, some states are much better at it. In some states, they've been trained. So 20 plus years ago, when I was at the prosecutor's office, I was also an advocate at the local police, local law enforcement as well. And so we would train the officers on what to look for, how to actually find out who the victim is. We would do the cycle of domestic violence. So we would do all these trainings. And so our state in Oregon is actually one of the better states because a lot of the officers have gone through domestic violence training.
Good.
But not all states are the same. And so when I lived in Florida, right after the hurricane, when my ex-husband went on his narcissistic rage and just, it was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen, punching walls. He looked like the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And there was an incident. I mean, he was just provoking and tormenting and provoking and tormenting. And when it stopped, picking on the kids, all this stuff. We had 6 little boys, all under the age of 14. You know, I had my 2 boys, he had his 3 boys, and then we had 1 little boy together. And it got really bad, and he wouldn't leave me alone. I mean, the provoking, shining light in my face, kicking me, pushing me off the bed, calling me every name you could think of.
Mm.
And so one night I punched him, and then he beat the shit out of me. But guess what? I went outside and he called the cops. And I only learned recently that he had set this whole thing up. But this is what they do. I was arrested and I went to jail. I'm 5'9" and I was probably 125 pounds.
Yeah.
He's almost 6'4". He was 280. You think my punch did anything to him? No. But what I had learned from one of my stepsons was that he went into the bathroom and he slit his eye with a razor blade. And blood gushed all, because I never saw him. I never talked to him again after that night. I guess I did have a boundary. Jail was my boundary. And I went completely no contact. And to this day, I've never said a word to
Yeah.
him since that night I was arrested. And he just let the blood go everywhere. And so one of the things that officers look for when they're trying to figure out who the primary aggressor is their blood. The other party has blood automatically. I was never properly interviewed. I was outside in the dark. No one looked at me when I got to jail and the nurse did an assessment. I was covered in bruises and all kinds of stuff. No one ever even interviewed me. They took his story. And I later found out he has sent 4 other women to jail. They get better and better and better. Now he is a malignant, borderline sociopath, the worst kind.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the laws, the law in theory is a good law.
Yeah.
But in practice, the officers aren't properly trained. And how disgusting and the re-victimization. I went to jail after my husband kicked the shit out of me
Yeah. It's just more.
because he slit his eye, because he knew that if it was him, he would be in there for a very long time.
Correct.
I got out really fast, but it still wasn't less traumatizing. And when I was in there, I know the legal system.
Yeah.
I know what was going to happen. I know all of this. And honestly, after being in such a burdensome marriage, I enjoyed a night by myself. And it's like I know it will all get dropped. I know it will all go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I met a lot of women in there. There was probably five other women who were in there for the exact same
Amazing.
thing. And they're freaking out. They don't know what's going to happen. Some of them have felony charges. I just had a misdemeanor. But but they didn't know the laws. I
No.
mean, they know the laws per se, but they don't know how to navigate the legal stuff. So what happens when you react, yes, because that's what they want.
Yeah.
And you do something like, I mean, I punched my husband and I went to jail because he slit his eye. And yeah, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
bizarre.
Very.
And I got out. But like these other women who don't, they might not have the money. Maybe they're indigent. They're still caught up in that cycle, and
Yeah.
now they're coming in and out of jail because it's reactive, and they don't know how to break those patterns. And
No.
so you have to look at your life. You have to come to this place where you've just had enough. Like myself, laying there on the floor, like this isn't working. I can't have another. There can't be a third. So I need to figure out why I keep attracting these type of men into my life. Now, again, I didn't grow up in trauma.
Right. And that brings me to my next question, which was, how can you explain your signature framework that integrates the belief with the behavior? And so how does it help, people transform their lives? Because that's the point you're getting to right now.
Yeah. So, a couple things I'll bring up. So, and these are some things that I always hear people talk about as well, and they're not fully understanding it, right? So, for instance, I'll hear people say, well, it's the law of attraction and
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. So the law of attraction means that like is attracted to like, right? We are attracted to whatever it's magnets. We all come together, we're attracted. But the law of attraction is a secondary law to the law of vibration.
Yeah.
So the law of vibration says that everything vibrates, nothing rests, everything moves.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen those cymatic frequency plates?
I know.
They,
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah. So people will have these cymatic plates. They're like metal plates, and then they'll put sand on them and they'll play a certain frequency.
And it vibrates a sheet.
And yeah, so the metal plate is vibrating to the frequency, right? Because the frequency is just a rate of vibration. So they play this frequency, and all the sand that is attracted to this frequency comes together and creates a pattern.
Yeah.
So say the shape is like the circle with some intricate things, and that's the pattern of that frequency and that attraction.
Yes.
So then you can change the frequency, right?
Yeah.
You change the frequency, and now the sand, everything that is in vibration with that frequency, forms a different pattern. This is very similar to us. We all have a frequency, we all have a vibration that is unique to us. And so, as we are going through life in our frequency, we are attracting things into our life that are in harmony with who we are. And that's where a lot of people miss the law of attraction. The law of attraction, it's not what you want. Well, I've been like trying to manifest all this and do all this. No, it's the law of attraction is you're attracted to what is in harmony with you
Very important.
internally.
Yeah, it's good.
They go together. And so when you look back on your life and you see the patterns that your frequency, that your vibration is attracting, you can say, oh, I love that. Or you can say, I don't want that.
Mm.
So then how do you change the pattern? You have to change the frequency. You have to change your frequency if you want to change those patterns.
Mm.
So, how do we change our frequency? Well, remember, it's within. You need to change the way you think. You need to change the thoughts you emotionalize. And when you do that, you will raise your vibration and you will start attracting better things into your life because we attract who we are. And so that brings me to my next question. Well, am I a narcissist then because I'm only attracting narcissists?
Interesting.
No, it's deeper. Remember, everything is a reflection.
Yes.
And so everything's a reflection, and there's also the law of polarity, which is the universal law of opposites. We attract the things that are in resonance with who we are. And so I can easily see between my second husband, I mean, between my first husband and my second husband, I just spent 14 years with someone who cheated on me all the time. I had a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. And then when he left for another woman. And then he used legal to further traumatize me. And so I was very, very broken,
Mm.
very wounded, very angry, very resentful, all those big, heavy emotions. And
Mm.
so we attract that. So it's not necessarily a narcissist, but you attract what is in resonance, what is in harmony with you. So I also attracted another very angry man.
Yeah.
I attracted another very resentful man.
Yeah.
So I attracted this person who was in harmony with my emotional state. So it didn't have to be a narcissist. That's just
How it turned
who
out.
came to me, you know. But my first marriage, so he was a covert narcissist, and I was not a broken, wounded woman. And so again, we attract what is within us. And so growing up and in high school, I made a lot of covenants with myself. Now, my parents are still married and they have modeled a healthy relationships and healthy marriage.
Yeah.
But remember, my parents broke a lot of generational
Yes.
traumas in their family. But still, those traumas still play out for several generations. So
Yeah.
they might have ended it, but it can still play out. And so all three of my sisters, I come from a family of it was four girls, four sisters. They all got pregnant really young.
Yeah.
And my mom did, this was back in the day. My mom was 14 when she had my sister. My mom was 16 when she had me. And now, my sisters are they're 18 or 20, and it's following these same generational patterns
Yeah.
because all my aunts were and all my cousins were. And so I started making all these covenants. I'm never having sex. I'm never getting married. I mean, here I'm just a teenager, right? But I'm saying all these things because my life was very focused. I've always been a very driven, motivated goal person. And so if I got pregnant, that would ruin my life. I wouldn't get to do the things I wanted to do. And I saw that with my sisters. Here I am traveling all over the world doing all this, and they have a toddler.
Yeah.
I have a toddler now, but I'm also very old, much older. I started much later. And so, you know, I I got emotionally involved with I'm not having sex. No guy is ever going to take my dreams away. No guy is ever going to come and tell me how to live my life. Blah, blah, blah. All the things I said as a teenager. Fast forward 10 years later, and I meet someone. It's like, oh, maybe I'll have sex with him. Maybe we'll get married. And so you forget about all these subconscious beliefs that you have programmed into you. And so again, we attract what is in harmony with us.
So
And we attract.
it's just beautiful that you presented it like that. It's amazing. That's a really great way of helping people understand. Did you have more?
Well, it's just we attract what is in harmony with.
Yeah.
And so I attracted a man who um, was a covert narcissist.
Yeah.
And so because our internal beliefs need validation, and we're talking subconscious here. I didn't remember this stuff.
No, you
I
do
didn't
now.
remember these covenants, these contracts I wrote with myself. And so it's like we have to pause and rediscover and remember who we are. What subconscious programming and subconscious beliefs did you bury down there? And is that why you are creating these patterns in your life? And so, because our subconscious beliefs want to find that expression and that validation, so we can believe it, because we need to validate those beliefs, right? I need to say that no man is ever going to control me. So what do I get? A man who wants to control me, to validate those subconscious beliefs.
Yeah.
So don't let him control you. Leave. Well, now it's different. And so what I do is, like you said, integrating our intellectual understanding with our subconscious programming. We have to pause, and we have to look at those.
Yeah.
And if when you're in your pause and you're looking at it, and you say, I keep playing out these patterns in my life, then you have to change your frequency. And so that means you have to get emotionally involved with an idea, a version of you that is so much greater.
Yeah.
And so what I did, I actually came up with the formula for transformation, for quantum leaping our
Love
lives.
this.
Yeah.
This
And
is my
so
next question. You're doing so well. You're flowing on. And I'm like going, because it was like, what does it mean to rewrite your fairy tale, right? And
yeah,
that's where we're at now. And how, and you've got the concept. So, and how has this concept helped your community that's now around you, or your tribe? This is it. This is
yeah. yeah, so this is actually my book. So my book that's coming out this spring, it's called Magnificent Me, A Process for Higher Self Creation.
Oh,
And so
I love that.
this. So I've never watched the movie The Secret. I just it's on my list. I haven't gotten to it. And so many people they tell me that one of the frustrating things about The Secret was that it didn't give them a formula.
Yeah,
I'm a math person.
I agree.
I'm a lawyer. I want a formula.
Yeah,
Tell
me
me the
too.
formula. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I came up with a formula. And I will say it wasn't all me
yeah,
because I was again, I've been a mentee and a student of Bob Proctor
yes,
as well. And so Bob Proctor started the formula. I expanded it and took it further
yep,
using my legal background. And so the formula is you have to the first step is fantasy. We
yep,
have to go back to our imagination. And when you are in toxic marriages like this, we stop imagining, we stop dreaming, we stop believing because so many times our dreams are taken away. You know how many times I've had to start my happily ever after again? Well, that's it's exhausting.
it is.
So then you just stop. You
Yeah.
just stop. And plus, you don't have time. You don't have time to think because you're needed to fawn and validate and affirm and, be the everything to the relationship.
Yes,
And so the first thing we have to do is we have to start dreaming again. We have to start fantasizing. We have to know what we want. And so many of us, we don't know what we want.
no, they don't.
But if you pause and you remember who you are, you will start to use your imagination. It is one of the most powerful gifts that we've been given. We can create anything we want,
Yep.
anything we desire.
Yeah,
And so we start with fantasy.
love that.
Let's imagine. And I love it because I have little kids and I watch my little kids play and it, they go into their imagination without even thinking. It's so subconscious. They play and they don't just, it's not like, oh, here's Batman and he's playing with Spider-Man. It's, I have embodied Batman, and I have embodied Spider-Man, and I am both.
Yeah,
It's not me playing with a figurine, it's me
yeah,
living out a wild fantasy. So we have to begin with fantasy. We have to know what we truly desire. If everything and anything was possible, what would you want?
yep,
Who would you want to become? And so then we go to tender. And in the legal words, tender
yep,
is
yep.
ready, willing, and able.
Hmm.
And so you have to be ready. And being ready isn't, um, okay, let me get my affairs in order. No, being ready means you have to have an intense, burning passion, desire to be something different than what you are. Remember, we're changing the frequency. We don't want to repeat those patterns. It has to be a burning desire
Love.
for more, and that you are meant for more.
Yeah.
I live in Oregon, and in the summertime, Oregon's on fire. It's just we have forest fires.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, my favorite forest burned down. And it was so sad because it's where I grew up and I love the forest and going out there and going hiking. And it was all the trees are down. There's nothing left. It's all bare. But So about a month after the evacuation, and it was about a month before we could actually go out and see the forest again. You're walking around, and I've noticed there's still trees that are smoldering. They're still smoking.
Wow.
That is being ready. When all the other fires have been put out, you have to continue to burn. You have to continue to want to change.
That's good.
And then you have to be willing. Willing is a choice.
Yep.
No one can force you to do anything. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to transform your life? Are you willing to get uncomfortable? Are you willing to face your fears? Are you willing to jump into the fire? So my kids and I, we cold plunge. And so we'll sit in the hot tub, for like 10 minutes and get super, super hot. And then we go to this freezing iceberg pool that's right next to us because our pool is closed. And it's really cold right now. It's like 30 degrees. My kids, they're boys, they're little. They'll jump in and I don't want to jump in there. But and they can't force me to go in there. I mean, they can beg all day long, but ultimately the decision and the choice is mine. Am I going to jump in that cold plunge? I jump and I do the cold plunge and I stay in the cold water for 5 minutes because I know that in that discomfort, it's doing miraculous things for my body and for my mind. Is it fun? No. I'm never, if you want to feel, if you want to truly experience what 1 second feels like, if you want to know what it means to live in the moment, cold plunge.
Yeah.
And so willingness, you have to choose. It's your choice. And you can't just put your toe in.
Nope.
You got to submerge yourself. You got to go all the way.
Yeah.
So, and then there's able. I love what Napoleon Hill in his book,
Yes.
Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah.
he says, we wouldn't desire something if we didn't know we were able and capable of achieving it. We all know deep down if something, it can be the fantasy, but we might not know how it's going to happen, but we know that we are capable of achieving that. And so you have to know that you can do it. And so if being ready is the fire of desire, right?
Yeah.
And the willingness is the choice to jump into the fire, then being able is the belief that you will rise again from the ashes.
Hmm.
That's tender. So you have to have fantasy and you have to have tender. And then the third element is consideration. What is consideration? Consideration is in every element of a contract. Consideration is the price you pay. So, what is the price to pay for transformation? You have to completely give up the old version of you for the higher, more fully expanded version of you. That means you have to look at all your beliefs, all your assumptions, everything that defines you. Like I had to go through my house after the hurricane, and I had to go through my mind after the hurricane. You have to go through you, the older version of you. You have to look at your programming. You have to look at your conditioning. You have to examine your life. And you have to be willing to trade the version of you that is right now, all of it, for a higher version of you, for a more magnificent, more fully expanded version of you. And if you can say yes, the fantasy, tender, and consideration, then that is a contract for transformation.
That is a wonderful contract.
Yeah. And
And
you have to know that it's a contract.
and it is.
It's a binding agreement.
And I talk about contracts in relationships and stuff of the unspoken contract that people have before they go in, but that contract is never ever communicated between each party normally. And so I understand what you mean by contract as well. But what came up for me as you were talking just then with, what are we going to give up? And one thing I think people would go through there is grief. They're going to grief that part of themselves that they're letting go. But the willingness to say yes to that and that grief is part of that process. But that's amazing. Again, you roll right into that next question, and but it's what a beautiful framework that basically sits into, and having all those things, and not everyone knows that all those things really need to fit together. I can really see a lot of those teachings coming through that you talk about. So the next part of this, before we sort of wrap it all up, is you know um, you've been trained in the programs, like thinking into the results, and you lead the field. So how do these teachings contribute to your personal transformation?
Yeah. Yeah, those are great questions. Well, it was being in these mentorship programs that helped me understand the way my mind works. And so many of us, we are unconsciously creating our life and living our life, not knowing that we are the cause, but we are also the solution to all the problems in our life.
Yeah,
And so, both of these programs really help you understand your mind, but they also bring about a level of awareness.
yeah,
Because once you are aware of the patterns in your life, once you are aware of um, you, you can transform that. And so these programs have just been hugely instrumental in my thinking, and just helping me develop the new patterns, the new habits, the new paradigms, because that's how we transform, is by understanding
yeah,
all of this. We need to understand how our mind works. We need to understand that we are powerful creators. I mean, God, past 20 years, I created some pretty intense realities. But when we are conscious and when we are aware,
yeah,
instead of unconsciously creating, then we can take that fantasy, that goal, and we can turn it into whatever we want.
yeah.
And so it's very, very powerful. Um, I wanted to touch on just one other thing, because you brought up grief from
Yes.
the consideration. One of the powerful things I did, and I also talk about this in my book, is acknowledging the person you were.
Yeah.
Because without the old version of me, I would not be this version of me.
Yeah.
And so many times we can look at our past and our history, and we can be ashamed of it. We can want to hide it, not want to talk about it. But we have to acknowledge who that person was. The older version of me was so powerful, was so strong, was
Yeah.
so resilient, and she did incredible things with her understanding and her knowledge and her level of awareness of who she was. But I would not be here today if it wasn't for her resilience and her strength and her determination and her willing to say, I'm ready to transform and I'm ready to step into a higher version of myself. And I can also go back and say these to my two ex-husbands as well. We relationships there, we should grow from them. And if we're not moving forward and growing into growth and expansion, we're moving backwards. There's no stuck. It's a line. It's not, I mean, it can be more like a wave.
Mm.
But if we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards, and backwards is towards death and dissolution.
Yep.
It's not towards growth and potential and possibility. And so I can also go back and thank my two ex-husbands as well, because if it wasn't for those relationships, I would not be this version of myself either. And so many of us, we get caught in the, well, I'm not going to forgive him. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And I said, well, let's look at it from a different perception, a different perspective. What if they were here to launch you into your greatness? What would that look like?
Mm.
And so I can thank them and say, hey, you started a whole movement in a career that I never imagined for myself. And what if that was their role, to awaken and launch you into the world of infinite possibilities of who you could become? Isn't that a better way
Yeah.
of looking at it? And now that does take, transcending these levels of consciousness. You're not just going to wake up and be like, oh, you beat the shit out of me. Okay, I forgive you. Thank you for launching me. It was a process to get there.
Yeah, it is a step by
but
process. Yes.
but it's better than living years in resentment and anger.
And
I'd
trying.
much rather just say, I thank you, I release you. Thank you for launching me into this beautiful, magnificent version of me.
And you can say that about friendships that come along as well that help
Yes.
find that process. And basically, you've also, already answered the next question I had. So basically, that means, you're just, my script. It's unreal. And it's like, what are the most common barriers that face, women when they're trying to step into their power and how they can overcome that. And that is one of those barriers that we've just talked about. So we've covered that one.
Yes.
We've done it. You've done it.
Oh, well, there's another one too.
See that one.
I will touch on one. I will touch on one more because I like to bring this one up when people are repeatedly asked, why didn't you just leave?
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't you just go? Why did you stay? And everyone else, we can see it. Why do you put up with him? Why do you
Yeah.
take that kind of talk? Why don't you leave? You're smart, you're successful, you're doing it all anyways.
Yep.
So statistically, it takes someone 6 to 8 times of leaving before they actually leave for
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So what happens is when I have a little prop. So
I like this prop.
think of this person. It's a stick person, right? He has a big head. So this is your mind.
Yep.
We need an image for the mind. So the upper part is your conscious mind. This is your rational thinking, logical mind. The bottom half is your subconscious mind. This is your emotional mind. This is autopilot. This is where where our habits and our paradigms live. These are our sensory factors. So we all have them, right? We can see, we can smell, we can taste, we can touch, we can hear. So energy just is.
Mhm.
It just is. But when the energy is coming into us, when we're picking up the energy from our environment, from our partners, from whatever, it comes in and we make it positive or negative based on our thoughts. And so the energy comes in And then once we get emotionally attached to it, it comes down here into the subconscious. And then the subconscious controls our results, it controls our body.
Yeah.
So, an easy one, an easy way to explain this.
Yep.
We know we need to go to the gym. We want to lose the weight, but I don't want to go to the gym. So I'm not going to go. Therefore, my body is not going to take me to the gym, right?
Yeah.
It's an easy one because we all do that all the time. I need to lose this 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So why haven't you? Well, because I haven't got emotionally involved and I haven't embodied the person who goes to the gym. I'm not that person yet. So my body is not going to go to the gym. It's all just going to be up here in my head. There's not going to be any integration between what I know logically and what I do emotionally.
Yeah.
And so when we go to leave these relationships, we know intellectually that this person is not good for us. We know intellectually that we need to leave.
Yeah.
We know intellectually that he is not going to change and it's not going to get any better. But we start to get emotionally involved with leaving. We start to think about it.
Yeah.
We start to daydream. Well, what would my life look like? And I used to do this because I would sit there sometimes and I didn't have a lot of time to myself because my life was very demanding when you have a very controlling, crazy person. And so I would think about it. I hate my life. This isn't the life I wanted. This isn't the life I signed up for.
Yeah.
What would my life look like if I left? So we start thinking about it and we get a little bit of emotionalized with those thoughts. So it's emotionalized now, right? It's dropped down. So our body wants to go. So we go, but it's not firmly planted. There's still that cognitive dissonance. There's still that gap. We go for a day or two. They love bomb us back. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I love you. Come back. We're like, oh, he's changed. No, he just doesn't want to lose you because you're good supply.
Yeah.
And so you go back. And, but every time you go back, the gap closes a little bit because the more you become emotionally invested with leaving, the more you can start fantasizing and daydreaming.
Mm.
What is your life going to look like? So remember, we're creators. We can create our life. And so you start thinking about it. Well, what would it look like? Okay, well, how would I survive? How would I do this? How would I get money? And money's usually the big one. And I'll be the first to tell you in the US, there's a lot of resources. There's money out there.
Yeah.
Don't let your present circumstances dictate your actions.
Yep.
Continue to get emotionally involved with it. So now, like a month later, he's raging again. I'm going. You leave. This time you're gone for a week. Okay,
Mm.
you did it a week. You go back. The emotion, you're planting the thoughts of leaving, you're planting it deeper and deeper into your subconscious. You're closing the gap.
Mm.
You keep going, you keep going, you keep going. And every time you go, the fear becomes less. Because see what happens when you start to leave, it becomes a chaotic vibration because you want to go and you're starting to get emotionally connected. It's going deep. The roots are going.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a chaotic vibration, though, that's when worry and doubt,
Yes.
that's when fear. But every time you leave, you build up more courage. And
Yeah.
you continue to build up courage each time because now you can say, or now you say to yourself, I did it. I can do it again. I can do it again. And you continue to do it. And every time you take action on that, the fear becomes less and the integration becomes more, and you close the gap. So I always look at it like a triangle. I don't have a triangle prop. So you have this triangle, right?
Yeah.
And on one end of the triangle is the older version of you, the version of you that wants to stay.
Yeah.
But you're closing the gap between what you know and what you believe. And so you're bridging the triangle down until it completely integrates. And once there is complete integration between what you know intellectually and what you feel and believe emotionally, you will leave for good. Now, there's only how do you get uh, emotionally involved with that new higher idea? And so this is where I was saying that you begin to fantasize about leaving. You start reaching out. You start taking action on all these things. You reach out to friends. You start talking about it. You
Yeah.
start sharing your story. Maybe you tell people about it. And you know, because there still is some fear because of all the gaslighting. He said, no one will believe you. No one will listen to you. You are worthless. But you believe that you are more. Even if you don't fully believe it yet. And the more you can get emotionally involved with leaving, it will close the gap.
Yeah. That is good. I love the model because it really does give, people something to look at as well, and the five senses and so forth. Now, and I know that we've taken up a bit of time here now, and I think we could talk forever. So, and I can't wait for this book to come out either. But I just want to go with some final thoughts. And so, if you could give one piece of advice to women who are hesitant to take that first step toward their own transformation, what would it be? I know you've already said it.
It would be that you are worthy. And, I don't say deserving because deserving means that you had to do something for something. Worthiness is just, it's innate, it's who you are. You are worthy of living the most abundant, the most magnificent, the most glorious life. Don't waste it.
No,
I
I,
wasted 20 years, and I don't want to say wasted
I know, I know.
because it got me to where I am, but you are so much more. And when you believe in yourself and believe that you are so much more, you will transform.
Yeah.
And it will be amazing.
One of my mentors has always said to me, "You were born worthy and nothing has changed." And when
Yeah.
he first said that to me, I went, "What do you mean?" And then as I kept saying that to myself, I was like, I get it. I was born worthy and nothing has changed. And that continues on, from her mentoring to my mentoring and so forth. So, what I want to
Yeah.
know is how can women connect with you and engage with your work, whether it's through the book, obviously it's coming out, community, social media, or any of those things. What and how?
Yeah. So right now, the best platforms that I'm on are LinkedIn and Facebook, but I'm launching my membership group Jan in at the end of the year,
Okay.
beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Yep. It's called Rewrite the Fairy Tale
Oh,
because so many of us we were promised the fairy tale over and over and over again, and we've had to rewrite it or we stopped dreaming. And so the group it's an accountability group to help you close the gap between what you know intellectually and what you believe emotionally.
good.
And so there are only two ways to close the gap.
Hmm.
One is through um, an emotional impact. So think of COVID, think of 9/11 here.
Yeah.
These were big emotional events that were so dramatic
Yeah.
and so traumatic that it reprogrammed us instantly.
Yeah.
When you are in the abusive, psychologically and emotionally abusive relationships, that is a big emotional impact that has rewired you and reprogrammed you. And so instead of waiting around for a positive emotional impact, because that's rarely happens, it's constant spaced repetition, like what you were just saying, which is why I'm bringing it up, because your mentor had to tell you you were worthy, and then you constantly had to tell yourself, because it had to
Yeah.
to get down into the subconscious, which is where our emotions are. And so it's through writing, and we write because when we're doing something, it is creating new neural pathways, because we have to reprogram ourselves and rewire ourselves to become this fully expanded, magnificent version of ourselves. So I've done it with like serenity, peace and ease in my life, abundance, prosperity, money, relationships, health, whatever,
Yeah.
because we have to. That's how you reprogram, is constant spaced repetition. Put it on a loop, do the affirmations. You can't just say the affirmations and be, oh, but I said the affirmations. No, because you're still up in your logical conscious mind. It has to go deeper. It has to go to the land of the paradigms,
Yeah.
the subconscious.
And you've got to feel it in the heart. And you've
Yeah.
got to feel it in those emotions that you've been talking about. Well, what a journey, right? This has been
Yes.
an amazing, step forward. And that book comes out next week, and we can engage with you on Facebook. We can engage with you in this membership that's coming out soon. So I'm really great. I'm going to look forward to that. What I'll constantly do, because I'll put this out on my channel, but at the same time, on when those links come about, we'll put those links under there so people can basically hop on those links as well. So I'm hoping that you will also send them my way so that we can do that,
Yes.
or pop them in the link. I'll send you the links for this as well. But what I wanted to know was, this was an amazing conversation. And I think for me, life is all about conversation. And if we don't have these conversations, how the hell do people know about us, right? And
Yes.
how do they know that this journey is actually happening? And I want to do that for a truckload of women as well. But through every interview, I always get something from it as well. So you have definitely, shaped a bit of my mind more today as well. So thank you very much for that, Stephany. That is wonderful. And it's been beautiful to see and understand that experience, which is really in a short amount of time, but with a lifelong amount of learning.
Yes.
And have you got anything last to say before we leave?
Well, yeah, it's just, you're worth it.
Yeah.
You're worth it. And your magnificent life is right here waiting for you. It's not that you are becoming someone different. You are stepping into a higher version of you. I have one more little prop. I guess I'll just throw it out really quick
Do it.
if we have time. Okay. So
Oh my
you
goodness.
you know what these are, right?
Yes,
You know what these are.
I've got a Christmas one.
Okay. So because sometimes people think, well, we're just we just have to be someone we're not. No, these are all versions of you
Um,
that are already here. But sometimes when we are stuck, when we feel stuck in these toxic relationships that aren't going anywhere, we get really small.
yeah.
And when you're really small, you're not aware of how big you can be. And so some of us We do it linear. We grow a little bit
Yeah.
and we grow a little bit more. And maybe this version can't see this one, but this version can see this one. Or we can quantum leap ourselves. You can take my formula when you're little and take my formula and quantum leap to this fully expanded, magnificent version
Love that.
because it's there. And my book will show you to see this version of you.
It's wonderful.
So you're not someone different. You are always, all these versions of you are within you right now, waiting for you to let them out. And we in the world want you to come out because what wonderful gifts do you have that you can share with all of us? And if you don't come out, the world will never get to hear or to see your brilliance or to read your books or to experience you. Uh-huh. I'm a visual learner, so
Love
I
it.
have so many props because I have to see.
I
That's
understand.
how I learn.
And I love all round learning. You know, I love hearing, I love feeling, I love seeing. So I really value how you do that as well. And I think that's a great introduction to the book. So what I'd love to do is, you know, once that book's come out, and I'd love to touch base again and show us the book, show us the title, show us all those sorts of things. And
Yes.
I'd love you to do one tiny reading from it.
Yes, I would love that. I would be truly honored. And yeah, I would love it. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Well, Stephanie, it has been such a treasure. I do hope you get some sleep for tonight because it's nighttime over there for you, correct?
Yes, yes.
I'm just about to tuck into my dinner time, and we're going to catch up again soon when this book is launched, and we're going to follow that trail and hope a truckload of women come and, you know, transform their lives with you. So I'm very honored to have met you, and I hope you have a beautiful evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Stephanie. Bye.